Welcome to the channel. I'm back to break down the 6-game slate on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you've been tuning in regularly, you may have realized I didn't release a video on Friday, and that's because DraftKings and FanDuel didn't actually release pricing until about 11 o'clock, and I typically, Monday through Friday, I do have a 9 to 5 job, so I'll wake up at 6 a.m. to get all my content finished up, and then record and get the video out to you guys. So I apologize for not having a video out Friday. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually give you guys some free content today. So linked in the description will be my Mlb Dfs package as well as my MLB betting package, which will be free today. And as we go through the video, I'll give you guys some access as to what's going on over there as well. Break down my tools and stuff I'm working on. And if you're interested, you can go ahead and purchase my Patreon package, where you'll get access to, you can either get the betting package, the DFS package, or the combo package where you get both. But both of those will be free today. The link will be in the description, so go ahead and check that out. And you'll get access to all the tools that I go over throughout the video. You can follow me over on Twitter at KJK DFS. And with that being said, let's go ahead and start breaking down this slate today. So we have a 6-game slate. Not the biggest slate, and the pitching's kind of weak, so it's kind of an interesting one. So there's going to be a lot of bats to pick from, and I do think pitching is going to be a priority in an extreme way. So as always, I like to go ahead and figure out the pitchers we're going to want to target in our lineups, meaning the pitchers we're going to want to actually play in our lineups. And the first guy that stands out today in the K-rate category is that in Lance Lynn. Lance Lynn's taking on the LA Dodgers, though, so he doesn't have the best matchup. If you look at his splits, he's got a 32.1% K rate against right-handed hitting, and then it drops down to a 19.9% against lefties. So we do greatly prefer Lance Lynn in right-handed heavy matchups, meaning the other team having a right-handed heavy lineup. And when looking at the Los Angeles Dodgers, they do have their fair share of lefties, and they're just a really good lineup up and down. So I don't really know if we're going to have a ton of interest. Well, I should correct myself. We're definitely going to have a ton of interest in Lance Lynn, and I just want to throw a disclaimer that he doesn't have the best matchup. But with the pitching being so weak, I do think that Lance Lynn is a priority. And when looking at my cheat sheet and power rankings over here, so this is something that I'm offering on my Patreon. My power rankings actually have Lance Lynn coming at number 3 today as far as pitchers to target, and this factors in his strikeout stuff, his matchup, and all of that stuff. So he is in the top 3 for my priorities of pitchers that I want to target on today's slate. So Lance Lynn, the guy I have to point out, it's just the matchup in the Dodgers, but the strikeouts are there, so you got to like him. Second on the list is that in Ross Stripling. Ross Stripling has a much better matchup in the Texas Rangers. And when looking at his splits, he's got a 23.6% K rate against righties, and then a 26.6% K rate against lefties. So he's actually good or better against left-handed hitting, which is great because I'm looking at his matchup today in the Texas Rangers. They do have their fair share of left-handed hitters, and then the right-handed hitters are mostly guys that excel against left-handed pitching. So going to have some interest in Ross Stripling today. As I mentioned, pitching's really thin on this slate. We have Stripling and Lynn in this first game. And then our third option that I want to break down is Dylan Bundy. Dylan Bundy has a 24.3% K rate. Against righties, he's got a 30.5% K rate, and then against lefties, it drops down to an 18.2. So we definitely have some splitsy guys on the slate today. Guys that really excel against one type of handedness hitter and guys that aren't so great against the other. And Bundy's another splitsy guy. So, when looking at his numbers, we do prefer to target him against right-handed heavy lineups. And he's not going to get that in the Mariners. They roll out a lot of lefties. So not the most ideal matchup from the splits category. But if we go ahead and look at the team hitting data sheet that I have here, you can see that the Mariners are actually a fairly decent matchup when looking at their K rate. They have a 24.4% K rate, so they're orange across the board in the ISO, the slugging, and the WOBA category as well. So they're not the greatest team. And then when you look at specifically their numbers against right-handed pitchers, they have a 23.1% K rate, which isn't the worst in the world, but the fly ball, the hard hit rate, and the slugging and all that stuff's very mediocre. So they're just a lineup that isn't the greatest, isn't the most threatening. And that's really the big reason we're going to have interest in Dylan Bundy today. Our pitching is limited, and he gets a good matchup taking on the Seattle Mariners. Moving further along, and guys, we're going to want to target for pitching. So things get real difficult once you get past those guys, because it's not like we really have a ton of great options, as I've already mentioned multiple times. So this is where we may want to be looking at matchups and guys or teams we can target from a matchup perspective, and strictly from a K rate. Looking at the K rates, we already pointed out targeting the Rangers, which when you look at their stats on the sheet, there's a lot of red going on as far as the ISO and the slugging and stuff. So just another thing to point out as far as looking Ross Stripling today. And then, the next team that stands out from a K rate perspective is the Brewers. And you look at the Brewers, they have quite a bit of red and orange going on type of deal. And the pitcher taking the mound against them today is that in JT Brubacher, who's a guy we don't really have a lot of data on. And I don't really know that I necessarily actually want to target him, but he's someone I'm just going to mention as a dart throw, so to speak. Someone you could take a risk on just because of matchup. Our pitching is so limited. And if we want to be risky, he's a guy we can throw in our lineup, because when looking at the Brewers numbers, they have a 26.5% K rate, and then a lot of orange going on across the board. And then when you look at their numbers against right-handed pitching, they're pretty much red and orange across the board, which you wouldn't typically think. I mean, the Brewers, I don't think people think of the Brewers as a bad hitting team, but when you're looking at their numbers this year, we're dealing with a 1,141 plate appearance sample size as a team, and their numbers across the board are pretty rough. So when looking at this Brubacher kid, we only have a 15 innings pitch sample size, but he's got a 23.5% strikeout rate, and it's just the hard contact, the ground ball, and the walk rate that have been bad. So when looking at the splits against righties, it's been pretty bad, but he has a 25% strikeout rate, and then his lefties the same thing. So I think he's going to be a high strikeout, high hard contact rate guy, but he's someone that we can take a risk on today, and he's someone I want to mention to let you guys know. You can take a risk on him. He's cheap. Throw him in your lineups and see what happens if you're interested in some elite bats, and we definitely have some elite bats on the slate. So with that being said, let's go ahead and transition over to those elite bats. And just bats we're going to want to target in general today. So when looking at pitchers we want to target, I like to go ahead and sort my sheet by Sierra. It's just a metric stat that gives us a good idea of how good a pitcher's been in the past and how good they're projected to be in the future. And the first guy that stands out on our sheet today that's been bad is Antonio Centella. And Centella has to pitch in Coors Field today against one of the hottest teams in the league in the San Diego Padres. So we're really going to like the Padres today on the slate. And when you look at his splits, he's very bad against righties. And then against lefties, he's actually better. But the San Diego Padres have two guys in their lineups that I guarantee you know their names if you're playing daily fantasy baseball. And if you don't, you should get to know them because they're very hot, in Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado. And we'll actually go ahead and look at my hot hitter StatCast data sheet here. If we go ahead and look at the hot hitter StatCast data, so this is a tool I put together where it's going to show you all the top 100 hitters in the league in barrel percentage, barrels in general, and then hard hit rate and exit velocity, and then you have max exit velocity. And I actually color coded it to narrow down, the hottest of the hot. So keep in mind, these are the top 100 in barrels in the league. So all these hitters are hot. I don't want to say they're not. But when you're looking at Manny Machado's numbers, he's green across the board, and that's being put up against 99 of the other hottest hitters in the league. So Manny Machado has been absolutely in fuego this year. He looks very good at the plate, and then he's not even close to, I shouldn't say not even close, but he's not up there with Fernando Tatis. Tatis is real high. He's got 20 barrels, 113.4 max exit velocity and 95.6 average exit velocity. And then a 61.9% hard hit rate. And he's got 60 hard hits overall. Then that's over 153 innings pitched sample size, or 153 plate appearances, I should say. And then the other thing I have is batted ball events. So that just tells you actually how many events are calculated into this. And he has 97. So Tatis, Manny Machado, very hot. Definitely guys you're going to want to have interest today. I have to point them out. And they're taking on Centella, who I already mentioned the splits. He's very bad against right-handed hitting. So, I mean, these guys are at the top of my list today for priority. And you're going to want to make sure you're getting Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado in your lineup. And then Trent Grisham, Eric Hosmer, Drake Cronenworth, this whole lineup, literally this whole lineup you have to like today. And this whole Coors game you have to like today. This is the #1 spot in the slate by far. You're going to want to play Coors bats. And with that being said, we'll transfer over to the Colorado side. And the Colorado side, they get to take on this young kid and Adrian Morohan, I believe is how it's pronounced. He's only got 12 innings pitched sample size, so we're not dealing with a ton of sample size from him. But he's got an 8.53 ERA. And then against righties, you can see he's given up a lot of hard contact. And lefties, it's the same type of deal. He's a lot of hard contact. He does have a 29.7% K rate against righties, so it looks like he's got some K stuff against right-handed hitters. And the lefties, it's been bad. But he's a left-handed pitcher, and he's going to Colorado to take on the likes of Trevor Story and Nolan Arenado, so they're at the top of my list for priorities. And then, we do prefer the right-handed hitters, so anyone that's a righty. And I do want to point out Elias Diaz as a catcher. I do think both of the catchers in this game are very valid to play in your lineups just because they're in Coors Field. The Vegas lines aren't out yet, but I have a feeling this game is going to have a tremendous total. It's 80 degrees, and there's 10-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to dead center. So, yeah, this Rockies game is going to be a big priority. You're going to want to play as many Coors Field bats as you possibly can today. If you haven't tuned into previous videos, Coors Field is a thing. Coors Field is the best hitting environment in baseball. And I oftentimes spend a lot of time analyzing games that take place in Coors Field because it's just such a game changer on MLB DFS slates. You have to decide if you're willing to play these guys or if you want to fade them because they always have high ownership. And today I would highly recommend not fading. I think you have to play a ton of Coors Field bats today. Get them in your lineups at all costs, and I think you're going to be happy with your results at the end of the night. So yeah, spent a lot of time on that, but I think for good reason. Definitely the top spot of the slate for bats. And then moving further along, another place that we can target is, Brett Anderson is second worst on the slate in Sierra. But if you look at his ground ball, his fly ball, and his walk rate, Brett Anderson's a guy that just controls the game. He gives up a lot of contact, and he allows the ball to be put in play. And I wouldn't be surprised if Pittsburgh goes out there and, slaps a bunch of singles and doubles around the yard and ends up putting up 5 runs against them. But from a daily fantasy sports aspect, I don't think we want to target him. That's just the story of Brett Anderson. He does a good job in the ground ball and the fly ball stuff. So that's where the appeal becomes a little limited. And then looking at this Washington-Boston game is the next spot that we're definitely going to want to target. It has a high implied run total, and when you look at the pitchers, they're not the best. We have 11.5 total in this game. Anibal Sanchez and Chris Mazza, and then the Red Sox bullpen. So, yeah, it looks like 12-mile-an-hour winds are blowing at dead center. There might be some weather concerns as far as rain, but it looks like it's going to be light, so maybe a delay or something. Just keep an eye on the weather. If you're a Patreon member of mine, look in the Discord chat for updates from me on weather and how I'm approaching the slate. That's another thing that you can get when you join me as a Patreon member. You know, access to the Discord chat. However, as I mentioned, everything as far as my spreadsheet and my tools will be free today, and that includes all of my packages, so my betting package and my DFS package. So link will be in the description. Make sure you capitalize on that today. And yeah, enough of that. Let's start breaking down this game. 11.5 run total, a 5.75 implied run total for each team. So we're just going to have a ton of interest in these guys. And when looking at the splits specifically, Mazza against right-handed hitters, he's been really bad in the WOBA and the slugging category. And then against lefties, it gets even worse. So he really struggles kind of against both, to be honest, but we do prefer left-handed hitters against him. And the Washington Nationals definitely have some lefties that we can target. Adam Eaton, Asdrubal Cabrera, Juan Soto is the top priority. Obviously, he's an absolute stud. And then Eric Thames at the bottom of the order has a ton of power, and Luis Garcia, top prospect, the second base, you can go ahead and throw in there. It's supposed to have a lot of promise, and he's only 3.2, so maybe capitalize on the low price tag while you can. And then the Red Sox side, Anibal Sanchez, looking at his splits to figure out who we're going to want to target for Red Sox bats. He's pretty below average across the board. And then against righties, he gives up a ton of fly balls. The ground ball and the fly ball rate's very bad, so right-handed hitters are going to have opportunity to take him deep today. And then against lefties, he's a little bit better. So we do prefer right-handed hitters, which is automatically going to throw JD Martinez and Xander Bogaerts to the top of our list for priorities. They are expensive, but when looking at the splits of Anibal Sanchez and their ability to hit baseballs, you got to have interest in them. And then Christian Vasquez, Kevin Pillar, and Jose Peraza at the bottom of the lineup you could throw in. And then obviously you can throw in the lefties as well. It's not like Anibal Sanchez is elite against left-handed hitters. We just do prefer the righties. But guys like Verdugo, Devers, and Mitch Moreland are going to be priorities because they're in the center of this lineup. And when Anibal Sanchez gets pulled, they're going to get to face that Nationals bullpen. So they're not necessarily facing him all game, and they'll get their fair share of opportunities, especially if the Red Sox can jump on the Nationals early and get some runs on the board. So yeah, got to have interest in the Nationals and Red Sox game. And then the last spot to mention is definitely this Diamondbacks Giants game. This is actually a spot that I think has sneaky shootout potential type of deal. I think there's going to be some runs put up on the board. And I actually will direct you guys to my MLB betting package real quick because I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek of what I have to offer there. So my betting package, you have this breakdown of my picks. So this is where I'll throw in color-coded data of the hammer spots, so to speak, like the top spots on the slate for me, where all the data matches up, the spots you're going to want to bet on. But then I also have the team hitting data sheet and the bullpen data sheet down here so that you can go ahead and check those out and figure out, some spots yourself. So each day I post my picks down here, and this is my pick of the day. I think the over is going to hit in this San Francisco Giants Arizona Diamondbacks game, and I go ahead and I line up the bullpen data, and you can see I put notes. So both of these bullpens are bottom five in the league in xFIP. So I think there's going to be a lot of potential here for some runs to be put up on the board, and the starting pitching isn't the best either. So that's my pick of the day for the betting package. That'll be free, link in the description, but that just gives you an idea of my appeal to this game today. And specifically when looking at, from a DFS perspective, the pricing and the lineups, the Giants are very cheap. And I think you can capitalize on that and throw them in with like an elite stack like the Padres or the Rockies that we already had discussed. So let's look at Luke Weaver and Trevor Cahill. First, Cahill, below average numbers across the board. The ground ball and the fly ball stuff is pretty decent. But then against righties, he gives up a lot of hard contact. And then against lefties, he's better. So we do prefer right-handed hitters against him. But, I think we can target everyone in this lineup. Just the righties are a priority. So make sure you get Starling Marte, Christian Walker in there. And then Cahill, Marte, Peralta, and Escobar in the middle of this order are obviously, the top bats along with Cole Calhoun. So that 1 through 6 range is really a priority. And then Stephen Vogt as a catcher you can toss in to finish up your stacks. And then the Giants side, when looking at Weaver's numbers, we can see that he's pretty much below average across the board, a lot of orange and red going on. Against righties, a ton of hard contact, ton of slugging. No ground ball, fly balls, really, just a lot of red and orange going on. And then it's lefties, he's better. So another splitsy pitcher to target. We want to target these right-handed hitters against him, but we can target both sides, really. And when looking at the Giants lineup, you also have to consider the fact that we are comparing him against other pitchers on the slate, and it's really Centella's splits that are standing out, and this Morohan kid, and he's got a 453 slugging still against left-handed hitting. It's not good. So I just want to make that clear. I like everyone in this game. I think this game's sneaky, and I think we can definitely take advantage of the Giants' price tags. So Yastrzemski's got a ton of power. Alex Dickerson's got a ton of power. Brandon Belt's got a ton of power. And I would say, the Giants are more of a lineup. We prioritize the top. The Diamondbacks, they have a little bit of a deeper lineup. So The Giants are really going to want to dial in that 1 through 5 range. So Yastrzemski down to Wilmer Flores. And my top options would be Yastrzemski, Alex Dickerson, and Brandon Belt. They are left-handed hitters that can crush right-handed pitching, so a lot of interest in them today. And that will just about sum up my breakdown of the slate. Not a lot of options at pitching, as I mentioned, so that's going to be a priority, but we can also go ahead and maybe throw a dart at this young Jonathan Brewmaker kid, as I had mentioned, or Brewbaker, I should say. And, probably going to want to throw some Bundy in there, and probably going to want to prioritize these top pitchers in Ross Stripling and Lance Lynn. So a quick little breakdown of what I've gone over. I like Ross Stripling and Lance Lynn as pitching options. This Washington-Boston game, you got to have a lot of interest in the bats. The San Francisco Giants-Arizona Diamondbacks game, I think, is sneaky for bats. I really do like this spot, and I had mentioned when looking at my betting package, I back it up with some data as to why we're going to want to have interest in, this San Francisco Giants-Arizona Diamondbacks game. The bullpens aren't great, and the starting pitchers aren't great either. So go ahead and toss those hitters in your lineups and feel good about that. The Padres and the Rockies game is the obvious spot of the slate. You're going to want to throw in as many of those bats as you can, mainly Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado, and then you got Story and Arenado on the other side. But definitely a lot of interest in the Padres. The Padres I would take over the Rockies if I'm picking one team. They've been hot, and they get to take on Antonio Centella, who doesn't strike anyone out. And then lastly, you got to like Dylan Bundy as a pitching option in this last game. You got to have interest there. So that was my breakdown of today's slate. If you're new to the channel, I do a segment every day where I pick my home run call of the day. It's the guy that I think is most likely to hit a home run, and I try to, back it up with data that we've gone over, as well as not always pick the elite name, throw in some sneaky picks. But today, I honestly am not going to be that sneaky because I just want to emphasize how good of a spot this is for these San Diego Padres. And they get to take on, Centella in Coors. The wind's blowing out at 10 miles an hour. And then when we look at Centella splits, as we had gone over earlier, against right-handed hitting, it's very bad. The woba, the hard hit rate, and the slugging. And it's lefties, it's better. So we have a ton of interest in these right-handed bats on the San Diego Padres. And then I had mentioned the hot hitter Statcast data tool that I've put together. Fernando Tatis is just absolutely in fuego, green across the board, being compared against some of the top hitters in the league. And so not the hottest take today for my home run call of the day, but I think I backed it up with a ton of data for you guys. And I think Fernando Tatis is hitting a home run. He's my lock of the day to go deep. Get Fernando Tatis in your DFS lineups at all costs. And make sure you go ahead and take advantage of the free offer I'm offering today with this my Patreon packages over there on Patreon. Links will be in the description. Fernando Tatis is hitting a home run. Get him in your lineup. Top priority of the day. That's what I'll sign off with. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you'll be notified for future videos. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Good luck tonight, and have a good one.